or your primary physician becomes the rheumatologist. And
good morning, everyone. We're at Human Genome Sciences. You can hear SMF, MMTs. You can hear the webcast at Leerink Swann. And we're going to listen to the webcast.
200,000 are moderate to severe. So these are patients for which the prednisone dose is higher than for the milder patients, and they have moderate to severe disease. Those were fundamentally the patients that we tested. We had a number of entry criteria, but as the panel mentioned, it was a fairly broad entry criteria for moderate to severe patients. And so we think that we tested a pretty representative sample of those patients. And those were patients that had positive autoantibodies. They were typically taking several medications. They were typically taking anti-malaria.
The broadcast is right here, Larry.
And we measured those patients against the symptom reduction index that we agreed to with the FDA. And we also measured a number of other secondary endpoints, which, as they mentioned in the panel, are perhaps the things that a lot of rheumatologists actually look at, like fatigue and biomarkers and the use of steroids and that kind of thing. So we tried to capture a lot of different endpoints in our studies, but the primary endpoint was a symptom reduction index. And that symptom reduction index has now become the basis of the guidelines that the FDA has issued for lupus development for other companies.
What are you and GSK doing to build up your market presence in terms of not only the sales force, but MSLs and reimbursement specialists? Will you have special services to make sure that the patients continue to come back for their infusions? And how difficult of a market do you expect it to be in terms of the compliance and getting the patients and the physicians on the same page and all aligned to want to use the drug regularly and for a long time?
Well, compliance is obviously crucial, and we are not allowed to promote the drug before the drug is approved. So, but we have been ready for the approval since the beginning of this year. Had we had approval on December the 9th, we probably would have launched Benlysta in early January of this year. So we've been ready to go, although actually the delay has been helpful for us because it's given us additional time to train the reps.
Just as I thought,
Peter Brady. Of representatives who will cover the payer community.
What's that, sir?
And so their job will be to make sure that
we're on live video,
the appropriate access is granted and that the
delay.
Benlysta is paid for if it's approved by the payer community.
That later.
And then we're going to have a separate group of specialists who target the physicians, and obviously they'll be describing Benlysta to the physicians, and they'll also be working with the back office, because one of the keys here is to make sure that no patient is turned away from Benlysta because of the copay associated with the drug. So we're going to have a very effective copay assistance program to the extent that we can do that. And so we'll have a group of representatives that will be working with physicians and healthcare providers on that. And then on the patient side, we have websites that we're going to have for patients so that they can understand the profile of Benlysta and, frankly, educate themselves about lupus. Although lupus is a condition in which the patients tend to be extremely well educated to start with, so I'm not sure there's a great deal we can do to educate this community about the disease that they have.
Are there any other special hurdles that you anticipate having to overcome? What are the major factors that you see gating the pace of the launch?
Well, this is a buy-and-bill drug, and given the way that these drugs are administered, the launch is always a lot slower for a biologic than it is for a small molecule drug. So what will typically happen is a patient will present initially, and the physician will then apply for reimbursement for that patient. And if it's the first time he's applied for reimbursement, it may take a while for us to work with the payer to assure that that patient is going to get reimbursed. And they then agree to the reimbursement, and the physician may, because of the cost of the drug, the physician may infuse one patient with that payer and wait to make sure they get reimbursed before they infuse another patient. And so the process starts a little bit
just
slowly.
exactly what I thought,
Look at
MMTs,
the
on
profile of other
way that they'll
biologics
do
and
it.
other
It's going to
immune
be a
agents
sliding risk
and how they've
management scale.
developed over the first year. Typically, the first quarter represents about 5% of the overall revenues for the first year of sale of the drug. The second quarter represents about 15%. The third quarter represents about 30%. And then the fourth quarter represents the remaining 50%. So if we get approved and if we launch the drug at the beginning of the second quarter, that fourth quarter would be the first quarter of 2012. Now, once you've got through that, then you have a J-code. You have much easier reimbursement. You're on the formularies, and you can really get it going. But initially, we will have a miscellaneous code. So there's a lot more paperwork associated with getting reimbursement, for example, from Medicare. And before you actually have the J-code, which will be next year, there's just a lot of paperwork. And so it takes a while for that process to get going for any infused biologic drug. The benefit of this is that we're selling into for 30 years. They